Anyway, so we're standing on 4A1, whether your Gemara is the right side up or backwards. And in short, we said Dayavesh, possibly the son of Esther, the king of Persia. We started counting his reign from Nisan, and then when he soured and he went bad, we reverted to counting him back from Tishrei, like we count all other Gentile kings. So now, 4A1, the right-hand column. The Iba is saying, Minolan de Achmitz. From where do I know that he soured, that at a certain point, he made a left turn? It was the 60s. Dixiv, because it says as follows. With regard to Dayavish's instructions with regard to building the Beis Hamikdash, Nidbachin di Even Gelol Telosim and Nidbach di At Chadas Benafkesam in Beis Malchus Isyav, which in English means build 3 rows of marble and 1 row of new wood with the expenses provided by the royal palace. We're going to pay for it. Lamalei de Ovid Hachi. Why did he do it this way with the rows of wood between the marble? Savai Mardu bi Yehudai, that if the Jews will rebel against me, Iklu benura, I'll be able to burn the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, and I'm putting wood in there that's flammable. So we see that right from the beginning he was a suspicious guy and he wasn't so righteous. On this, right, the Gemara. But didn't our Shlomo HaMelech, when he built the first Beis Hamikdash, didn't he also do this, alternating layers of stone and wood? V'aksiv shloisha ture gozes v'tur kereses arozim, 3 rows of hewn stone and a row of cedar beams. So if it was proper for Shlomo HaMelech, why were you suspecting Dayavesh? Says the Gemara, Shlomo Ovid Milamata v'Ovid Milamata. Shlomo made the wooden parts on top, while Dayavesh made it on the bottom. And this, by the way, we only know from tradition. There's no actual pasuk that says this. It's just that we know this. Right? If you take a look at the 3rd Tosfos on the page, Lav Mikra Darish, we don't learn this out from a pasuk. Elo Kabbalah Hayabiyam. It was a Kabbalah, a tradition that was in their mouths. Further, Shlomo Shekaba Binyana Iuloi Shikya Binine. Shlomo recessed the wooden parts that he put on top. Okay, he recessed them into the building, whereas Dayavesh did not recess them into the building. Shlomo plastered them with lime to make them not so flammable. Dayavesh did not plaster them with lime. And now in 3rd source, where we see that Dayavesh his personality started changing. Rav Yosef Itema Rav Yitzchak Omar Minolan de Achmitz. How do we know that Dayavesh became sour? Mehocha. And this is a very, very interesting Gemara coming up. Mehacha, and the king said to me, this was to Nehemiah, and his consort was sitting beside him. 4A2. My shogel. What is the definition of shigel that we're touching up as the consort? Amabar Rabba Lima Mishmei the Rav Kalbasa, a female dog. That in fact it was a female dog that was sitting. He installed a female dog next to him, as you can imagine why. Elamayata, if you're going to tell me that a female dog, if that's what shigal means, so deceived, then what is written in the next pasuk, Valmore Shemaya. Israel Mamto, Ulemo Anoi, the basic Oisa Kodomach Ant, Virav Rivono, Shiglosach, Lichanosach, Chambashotim Bahoin, you exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven, and the vessels of his house he brought before you, you and your nobles and your consorts and your concubines drank the wine from them. The Shogal Kalbasahi. But if Shiga was a female dog, Kalbose bas meshishta chamri is a female dog capable of drinking wine. Haloi kasha, it's not a kasha, the milful of ishasya, where one trained it to do so, and it drank wine. Elameyato dikse, but it's written, Benois Melochim, the daughters of kings, V'yarkisecha will honor you, Nitzav Shegel Lemincha Kikesem Oifir. The consort stands erect at your right in the golden jewelry of Oifir. And this is in Tehillim, and it's a marshal, an allegoric to Israel's future, Yisrael's future in the time of Mashiach. The Shogel Kalbasahi, but if Shaga is a female dog, what kind of tidings is this that the Navi is telling Klal Yisrael? Hachi kama, b'scha shechaviva Torah Yisrael, for the reward that the Torah being so dear to Klal Yisrael, like a female dog to adulterers. The chisam, the kesem oifil v'zaycha, to the golden jewelry of Oifir. A dog represents corruption, and Klal Yisrael, it's saying on the opposite of the corruption is the Torah. Or you can say shigel means a queen. The Rabba Balima Garmer a Gamale. And Rabbi Gamliel that said shigel of Dayavish was a female dog, he didn't mean it in that world. He mean he had a tradition that Dayavish's queen was really a female dog. V'amai karale shogel, shahoitza chaviva alav kishegel, because it was as dear to him as a queen. Inami yeshiva b'mokim shegel, that he would place her in the place of the queen. So in other words, as you can well imagine, the Gemara is saying essentially that Dayavesh fell to bestiality, and he did it b'fahesya. And the problem with all of that, of course, besides the obvious problem, is when the government legislates something that is wrong behavior, and the government gives it a stamp of approval, of legitimacy, then the Medrash says at the end of Bereshis, early Noach, once that happens, then the stigma falls away. When the stigma falls away, people don't even know that they're doing the wrong thing. They think that they're actually doing morally the right thing. And so, of course, they no longer can repent and change their ways. If you don't think you're doing the wrong thing, how can you go repent? You have nothing to repent on. And this is a cloud. Unfortunately, we're living in the same times today, where by starting with the 60s and moving forward to today, right, where everything goes. And if you say something about it, you're in the wrong. If they're in the right, the world has been turned topsy-turvy. What's wrong is right, and what's right is wrong. That's the beginning of the end of a society and of a country, as can be seen in the case of Dayavesh, the Persian Empire, right after Dayavesh essentially disappeared with Alexander Mokdam, Alexander of Macedonia. And as you can see from the Romans, the last 100 years of the Roman Empire, and unfortunately, we're watching the unraveling of the United States of America in that sense as a superpower. Anyways, because when people get soft and they just do kolayoim, they just do bad every day, and it doesn't seem to be bad. On the contrary, they argue that this is moral, allowing people to do what they want, in a sense that nobody has any constraints. That becomes that phrase at the fabric of society, and eventually it collapses. History tends to repeat itself, unfortunately. How else do you know that Davyove soured? Mehocha ad keset ad kisaf kakrin meyav ad chantin boirin me'od ad chama botin me'od ad batin mishach me'od malach diloy kisaf. Up to 100 talents of silver, and up to 100 cores of wheat, and up to 100 baths of wine, and up to 100 baths of oil, and unlimited salt. Mikara beloy kitzia, bahashta b'kitzia. Originally, when he gave instructions, he commanded that the outlay, the budget, will have no limit. He didn't put any limit. And now, the second time he gave instructions, there were limits up to what do you call it? Up to what do you call it? Up to 100. So the Gemara v'dumami karlei have kimle b'kitzusa. But maybe at the beginning he didn't have the determination of what the budget really is. Now they figured out what the budget needs to be. There's nothing wrong with putting a budget on a project. Says, well, you're right. Ella mechaber kedushanim mikara. We're going to learn, like we learned before, that Tayavish soured in the ways that we said before, whether in the placement of the wood or by the placement of the female dog right next to him, etc. So, why is it that the Gemara spends so much time on this? First of all, Dayavesh, as we pointed out, is a fascinating figure in Jewish history. Whether he was actually the son of Esther or not, etc. But more importantly, it was the point we made before. It's little things when the powers that be allow certain behaviors to take place and say that they are legitimate. The Gemara in many places more than subtly makes this point, that you are then, by looking at the inevitable, if you act like an animal, Bekitza, that you have no constraints, and that's your definition of freedom, is to do whatever I want, instead of saying the definition of freedom is to be able to look at what you're doing and make a judgment call and say no. That's the beginning of the end. And I think we all feel it here, that there's something very wrong with the country we're living in now. And in America, that something has gone completely wrong on more than one level. Jeff keeps going back to California, and every time he comes back, the first words out of his mouth are, it's getting worse, right? And I'm in New York, and I can tell you it's the same thing. It's just small things. The streets are dirtier. The crime, people are not out and about the same way they were at night. The little things that tell you that a society is breaking down. Anyways, further. Ula Regalim. The Mishnah said at the beginning that Nisan, the Chodesh Nisan, is the Rosh Hashanah for kings and for the festivals. So we learned this Gemara before. When one makes a promise or a donation, a pledge, he's got to pay it up within 3 festivals: Passover, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Maybe in that order, or any 3, a combination of the 3, or before the end of Sukkot, because Sukkot is the end of it. And this is the Gemara that's going to talk about it again. We've had this Gemara before. The idea is, what is the turn, according to this Mishnah, the turn for being over on Baal Ta'achel Shalem, do not be late in paying, is going to be, the turn is going to be Nisan, meaning it starts with Pesach, then Shavuos, and then Sukkot. Pesach in Nisan is the turn. So, here's the Gemara. Regalim be'echad b'Nisamu, are the festivals on the 1st of Nisan? What are you talking about? B'chamisha asa b'Nisanu. It's actually on the 15th of Nisan, when Pesach begins, when Passover begins. Rav Chisda, this is what it means. Regel sheboy Rosh Hashanah l'regalim. The month that has the festival in it, Pesach, is the new year for the festivals. What do I mean? Nafkamina l'noidei. The difference is if one makes a vow. If one makes a vow, l'kayim aleh b'bal ta'achel, with making sure that he doesn't break the prohibition of not delaying paying up his vow. In other words, you got to do, according to this, you got to do if Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot in that order passes after you've made the vow, you've blown it, you're over on Baal Ta'acher. Says the Gemara, the Rebbe, we're now on 483. The Rebbe Shimoni, and it's Reb Shimon, the Tanya, because we learned Echad Hanoida. Whether one goes ahead, one who makes a vow. The Echad HaMekadish, the Echad HaMarich. These are just different times. One makes a vow on a specific thing. He says, I'm making my value I'm going to give to the Beis Hamikdash. Or the Echad HaMagdish, he goes ahead and he points at one of his animals and says, I'm making this holy to give to the Beis Hamikdash. The Echad HaMarich, who makes an erech, the Torah gives different values of people between the ages as children until 20, from 20 to 60, and from 60 and above, each person has a different erech value. As soon as 3 of the Yom Tovim pass, over the Baal Ta'acher, he transgresses the Aveira of do not delay. Rab Shimon Oimeh, Shloisha Regolim, when it says 3 festivals have to pass, in order that to be over on the Aveira of Baal Ta'acher, on do not delay, it needs to be Kisidron in order, in sequence. The Chag HaMatzah is the Chila. What is the sequence? That Passover comes first, Pesach, Shavuos, and then Sukkot. The Chain Hoyer Rab Shimon ben Yochai, man. So did Rab Shimon ben Yochai say, Rabbi Shimon and Rab Shimon ben Yochai are the same person. Sometimes he's called Rabbi Shimon, and sometimes he's called by his full name, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Okay? But either way, he says as follows: Regolim, Pa'amim Shaloisha, Pa'amim Abba, Pa'amim Chamisha. Sometimes it's 3 holidays that pass, and then you transgress the prohibition of do not delay. Sometimes it's 4 Yom Tovim, and sometimes it's 5. Ketzah. No dalifnei Pesach Shoisha. If you made a vow before Pesach, then it's 3. Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Lifnei Atzeres Chamisha. If one vowed before Shavuos, he gets 5 regalim. Shavuos, Sukkot, then Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Because you need the order of Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Lifnei Achag Abba. If he does it before Sukkot, then he makes the vow before Sukkot. He gets Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Tanu Rabbanon. Chayovi hadomim v'erechim. One who is obligated in the payments of value or erech, meaning he says, I'm going to give my value of into the Beis Hamikdash, so he has to get himself priced out in the slave market to see what his value is. Or the erech, which the Torah does between a person who's between 30 days old and 20 years, from 20 years to 60 years and above, 60 and above, different values. Or the cherem, or the concentrations. And again, it's the same idea that if one is a cherem, it's again on. You could do a cherem on, I make this thing cherem. It's a way of making an object holy. It's just another version of the way of making an object holy. Or the akadesha is where one goes ahead and makes something holy, an animal of his holy. Chatos v'ashamis, chatos or an asham, which are obligatory or offerings. If one does an aveirah, one does a sin, he has to bring unintentionally. Let me underline that. Unintentionally, b'shoigeg, he does a sin unintentionally. He has to bring a chatos or sometimes an asham. On the other hand, we've got oilos ushalomim, or sometimes a guy he wants to bring a donative oilah or a donative shlomim. Of course, the shlomim could be both. It could be a shalmei riyah, a shalmei chagiga, right? The Shalmei Chagiga that you have to bring on Yom Tiv, right? The Chagiga offering so that you should have a lot of meat on your table for Yom Tiv, or an oiler that you're just bringing as a present to the Beis Hamikdash. Tzedakos u'maisris, somebody makes a pledge, or maisris, meaning trumas maisris, to split, to separate out. The mice over here, okay, trumas u'maisris. Give me a second. Okay, this is my Sarishan, my Shashani, my Sani, and of course it includes Truma. Bechar, a Maisa Bechar. The Maisa Bechar is the first, the what I call the tithe of the Bechar. Okay, take it from animals. Meiser, the Meiser over here is the Bechar is the firstborn, right? The firstborn of a cow has to be given over to the Kohen. Meiser is Meiser Behema. That means all the newborn animals, you put them through a pen, and every 10th one has to go, it has to be off, it has to be brought up to Yerushalayim. Or Pesach, or the Pesach, which of course the Gemara is going to jump on and say Pesach doesn't make any sense. Pesach has no Baal Ta'achad. You don't get 3 festivals to bring the Pesach. The Pesach you have to bring on the 14th of Nisan. So what is Pesach doing here? Okay, everybody understand why the word Pesach is hard to understand here. Now we're on Amid Beis, Dalit Amid Beis. 4b1. Jeff, remember to turn your Gemara backwards.
I you just did.
Okay. Okay.
Not going to hear the end of this.
Yeah. Leket Shikha Upeya. By the way, if you called Art Scroll and told them it's backwards, they would send you another version.
I don't know that I want to do that. This is kind of unique.
I know. Lekhet Shikha Peya are the things when one is plowing his field. Lekhet is what the sheaves that fall when you're gathering them. You're not supposed to pick them up, leave them for the honey. Peya, okay, Peya is the corner of the field. You're supposed to leave over one corner of your field for the poor people. Okay, Shikha is sheaves that you forgot to cut in the middle of the field. You know, a stalk here, a stalk here. You got to leave them. So what's the problem over here? This has nothing to do with promising. What happens if the farmer forgot and he collected the lekhet, the sheaves that fell, or he went back to cut the leftover stuff that he left in the field, or he didn't leave over a corner of his field? He's got if 3 of the Yom Tovim pass, he's over, do not delay to pay. So even lekhet shikha and peya, if you took it inadvertently, right, you better pay, even not inadvertently, even if you did it on purpose, you better pay it back before the 3 Yom Tovim pass. Says the Gemara, Rav Shimon Omer, not any 3 Yom Tovim. The Tanakama is saying all I need is 3 to pass. It doesn't matter the order. Rav Shimon Omer, Shloisha Regalim Kisidron. The 3 holidays in order. And the Chag HaMatzah is Techila, and Pesach is first. Pesach, in other words, it must be, there has to have Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Rameya Omer, Chivin Shavar Aleh Regal Achad, even if only one of the Yom Tovim pass, one festival passes, your Ibra, do not delay. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, even Shavru Aleu, Shnei Regalim. If 2 of the Yom Tovim pass, 2 of the holidays pass, and a 5th opinion, Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, says, as soon as the Yom Tov of Sukkot passes, so we got a whole bunch of opinion of when and how many Yom Tovim and what's the order of those Yom Tovim in order to be over on Baal Ta'achah L'Shamim. Do not delay on paying off. So now the Gemara is going to go ahead and analyze this for the next bit. Here we go. My Tama the Tanakama. Why does the Tanakama say we need the passage of 3 Yom Tovim, but it doesn't matter to me which 3 we need, which 3 is the order, as long as we pass 3, okay? Mechti, let's see. Minayu Sulik. The Torah had just finished talking about the Shalosh Regalim. The Torah just finished talking about the Shalosh Regalim. It said Shalosh Panim Hashana 3 times a year. You shall see all your all your males should appear before Hashem, your God. So, so why did the pasuk need to repeat itself after saying Shalosh Panim Hashana 3 times during the year? You have to come up, right? Why does it then have to repeat? On the Yontav of Matzahs, the Yontav of Shavuos, and the Yontav of Sukkos. Shma mino l'bal ta'acher. Learn from here that 3 Yom Tovim, and you didn't pay up, you're over on do not delay. What order of the 3 Yom Tovim? It doesn't really matter to me. As long as you pass 3 regalim, 3 holidays, in whatever order you pass it, you're over on Baal Ta'acher. But Reb Shimon Oimer, no. You have to have the order of Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, and Chag HaSukkos, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Einay tzarech loyma b'Chag HaSukkos. The truth is, the pasuk did not have to bring the last couple of words and the Yom Tif of Sukkos. Shabio Diber HaKosef, because that entire paragraph and pasuk was originally talking about which holiday? The holiday of Sukkos. All these psukim were brought in the discussion of the holiday of Sukkot. So I didn't need to bring it specifically over here when I'm repeating it. Chag HaSukkos. Why do I have to mention? Why is it mentioned? Loi mentioned Zeh Akron, to teach us that this is the last of the 3 Yom Tovim, that it needs to be Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. And Sukkot, when Sukkot is finished, then and only then are you over about Ta'achel L'Shalit. Do not delay in paying. Rameir, who says all you need is 1 Yom Tov to pass to be over about Ta'achel. Rameir, my Tama. What's the Tama Rameir? Diksiv, because the pasuk says, "Ubasa Shama ve'evesa Shama." You shall come there and you shall bring there. What do you call it? We have what is there's a connection between coming and bringing, meaning that right after you come, you need to bring your offerings. If you came and you didn't bring the offerings that you were supposed to bring, bang, you're over on Baal Ta'acher. You're over on delaying to bring. The Rabbanon. What are the Rabbanon are going to do with these words? It's a good point. Ubasa Shama Vesa Shama. Rabbanon Ahula say this is for a positive commandment. Okay? The first positive commandment is that you shall bring your things. In other words, bringing your things to keeping your word is a positive commandment. Perfect. 4b. Jeff, keep it turned. It's either it's turning or you're turning or you're standing on your head. One way or another. I see, since the Torah says when one makes a vow, you shall bring it, right? I see, and he did not bring it. You were supposed to bring it. You came. You didn't bring. You're over about on the prohibition of you delaying. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, my Tama, what's the reason Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov that he says as soon as Sukkot passes, even if it's the only regel that passed, if you get past Sukkot without paying, you're over on the prohibition of do not delay. Diksiv, Eile tasu Hashem b'moyadechem. These, the musaf offerings, you shall offer to Hashem on its appointed times, besides your vowed offerings, besides your nedavid. Milvad your nedavid. Miyat moyadim shnayim. The minimum number is 2. I'm sorry, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, as soon as 2 holidays pass, doesn't matter which 2. I'm sorry, I went ahead. It doesn't matter which 2 pass. If you're over on 2, if 2 holidays pass, you're over on Baal Ta'achim. Why? Because miyat moyadim, the word moyed is 1 holiday. Moyadim is at least 2 holidays. It's plural. The miyat moyadim shnayim, the minimum of an appointed time of a Yom Tov is 2 moyadim. So therefore, I'd say if 2 Yom Tovim pass and you didn't pay up, you're over on Baal Ta'achim l'shalit. The Rabbanon and the Rabbanim say, Ahul is Rabbi Yoina. The pasuk is needed for Rabbi Yoina. The Amar Rabbi Yoina, Hukish kol mayadim kulam zelazeh. The musaf offerings of all the Yom Tovim are compared one to each other. That what? Shekulam mechaprim al tumas migdash ukedoshim. That they all atone for the inadvertent tumah violations of the base of Mikdash and the holy things. If a Torah dika person, a pure person, eats from a tamid dika kachim, right? That's wrong. Or if one by accidentally brings in tamid dika kachim into the base of Mikdash, or he accidentally eats it. In short, all of those things the Musafim come to forgive. The Rabbi Elazar ben Rav Shimon, my Tama, what's the reason Rabbi Elazar ben Rav Shimon that he says as soon as Sukkot passes, it doesn't matter even if it's the only Yom Tov that passes, you're over about Te'acher. Titania, Rabbi Elazar ben Rav Shimon, lo yom Chag HaSukkos. It didn't have to say Chag HaSukkos because the whole paragraph and the pasuk itself at the beginning was talking about Sukkot. So why does it say Sukkot? Shaboy Diber HaKosar. Because this pasuk was already mentioned, because it was already mentioned that the Yom Tov was already mentioned in that pasuk. Lamanema Loimish Shezeh Goyrim, to teach us that Yom Tov Sukkot is the one that causes the prohibition of do not delay to take effect. Now the Gemara says, the Rameh ben Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, Rameh that says only if 1 Yom Tov passes, or Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov says 2 Yom Tov passes. Hi, b'chag hamatzos, b'chag hashvuos, b'chag hasukkos, my daughters pay. What do they do with this pasuk? They're not using this pasuk. They all use different psukim. They use different psukim to prove their point, right? Rameh used the pasuk of ve'veis shama, ve'ubasa shama, ve'veis shama. You will come there and you will bring to teach me 1. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov is using the words Elu Tasel Hashem b'moyadechem, in your holidays, plural. So what are they going to do with this pasuk? B'chag hamatzos, b'chag hashvuos, b'chag hasukkos. Mi boilek the Rabbi Elazar Amar Rabbi Yoshia. They need to prove what the Rabbi Elazar said in the name of Rabbi Yoshia. Dam Rabbi Elazar Amar Rabbi Yoshia. Minayin la'atzeres. How do I know on Shavuos? Sheyesh la tashlum min kol shiva. That there's a compensation period that lasts all 7 days. What are we talking about? On certain kabbonis, okay, you have to bring on every Yom Tov, you have to be a shalmei chagiga. A shalmei, you have to bring up a shalmei, what do you call it? This is the shalmei chagiga, the shalomim of the holiday, to make sure you have enough meat. If for some reason you didn't bring it up on the first day of the Yom Tov, you get 7 days to bring it. So on Pesach, you have all 7 days to bring the Shalmei Chagiga. On Sukkot, you have all 7 days to bring the Shalmei Chagiga. Shavuos is how many days? 1 day in Eretz Yisrael, 2 days in Chutz La'aretz. Who says you get 7 days just like the other holidays to be mashlim, to catch up on what you blew, what you didn't bring? Says it over here. How do you know you can compensate for 7 days? says like this: Talmud loymar b'chag hamatzos b'chag hashvuos u'b'chag hasukos. Makish chag hasukas l'chag hamatzos. The yontif of Shavuos is compared to the yontif of matzos. Ma chag matzos yesh lo tashlum kol shiva, just like the yontif of Pesach has compensation for all 7 days. You can bring on any day of the yontif. This shamei chagiga. So too, that 4b3. So too, the festival of Shavuos, the compensation period is all 7 days, even though the Yom Tov itself is either 1 or 2 days. So pray the Gemara, wait a minute. Why do you say 7? Let it be compared, instead of Shavuos should be compared to Chag HaSukkos and not Pesach. Ma'ala halon shemoina. Just in that case, there's 8 days of compensation. Afkan shemoina. Because how long is the Yontiv of Sukkot? It's really 8 days. The last day is Shemini Atzeres. Shemini Atzeres is the 8th day. Dr. Gemara, no. Shmini Regel B'fnei Atzmayu. The 8th day Shmini Atzeres is an independent Yontiv. It's an own Yontiv. And therefore, it's got nothing to do with the Shamei Chagiga of Sukkot. And in fact, the Shamei Chagiga of Sukkot only has Tashlumin, only till Hashanah Rabbah. Says the Gemara, when do we say that Shmini Atzeres is an independent Yontiv Le'inyan Pizar Kishav? Pizar means the pill, the pious. On Sukkot, 72 kabbanis were brought over the days of Sukkot. So there, the lottery was the regular daily lottery was put to the side, and every mishmar of the Kahanim, every house of the Kahanim, was able to bring some of the kabbanis on Sukkot. But on Shmini Atzeres, you only bring one musaf, only one. So they went back. You go back to the lottery. They restarted the lottery, the service lottery, back on Shmini Atzeres. The Zayin means Zaman, that you have to say Shechionu. Okay? The Reish is Regel. Now, what do we say on that day? We don't say on Shmini Atzeres, Chag HaSukkah says there. We say Shmini Atzeres HaChag HaZeh. When we say Ya'aleh V'Yovoy, and when we daven, we say Shmini Atzeres HaChag HaZeh. The Kuf means carbon. The carbon of Shmini Atzeres is completely different than the karbonos of Sukkot, which were much more. There were many more karbonos. The Shin is shir. The song is different. Rashi says, I don't know what the song was, but we have a tradition that the song, in fact, was Lamanetzeach ala Sheminis, a Lamanetzeach for the 8th. And the Beis is a bracha. Because on Shmini Atzeres, the people would bless the king. Would bless the king, as we could see that when by the Kamas, Beis Hamikdash, in the commencement, in the inauguration of the Beis Hamikdash, of the first one, on the 8th day, the people blessed King Shlomo, Solomon the king, Shlomo HaMelech. So that's it. Aval Inyan Tashlumim, with regard to compensation, Divrei HaKol Tashlum Derishanu, that it's included in the compensation of the first day of Sukkot. The Tanakh we learned, Mi Shaloi Chag Yontiv Harishin Shel Chag, one who did not offer up the Shalmei Chagiga on the first day of Sukkot, Chagig is Kol HaRegel. He's allowed to bring the Shalmei Chagiga any time throughout the Yontiv. The Yontiv Achrin Shel Chag, and even on the last day of Sukkot, he's allowed to bring the Shalmei Chagiga. So you see that it is 8 days. So let's compare Shavuos to Sukkot and give Shavuos also 8 days of Tashlumin. And for the Gemara, Tafasta Meruba Loi Tafasta Mu'et Tafasta. If you grab a large amount, you may not grab anything. If you grab a smaller amount, you're definite to get something. There's a famous lesson in life. Tafasta meruba loy tafasta. In Yiddish, they used to say, "Chapnish kahaisa lokshin." Don't grab hot noodles. It's the same idea. Don't grab for everything in one shot. So in other words, you have a choice between 7 days, Pesach, and 8 days, Sukkot. We're going to take the smaller amount. Okay? So Shavuos gets 7 days and Pesach gets 7 days. And therefore, in reality, Sukkot also only gets 7 days. So what law did the Holy One, if it's not comparing Shavuos to Sukkot, but only comparing Shavuos with regard to its compensation days to Pesach, then why does it say b'chagas matzos, b'chagas Shavuos, b'chagas Sukkos? What do I need the chagas Sukkos for? L'hukshe l'chagas matzos, to compare Sukkos back to matzos. And now we're on today's daf. Okay, we're just going to go a couple of. We're going to go a little. We're going to take an extra couple of minutes here if everybody's okay, so we can catch up here. Ma chagas matzos tunlino. Just we're on daf of Heyam and Aleph. Jeff, turn your Gemara around.
I got it. You're not going to let me forget, are you?
Just like the festival of matzahs, Pesach needs staying overnight. The pasuk says you should stay. If you look on the side of the art scroll, on the right side, it says Torah or Hasholem. It says, brings down the pasuk. Ubeshalta ve'chalta, you shall cook it and eat. B'makim asher yivchar Hashem l'kechta, in the place where God will choose. By upanisa b'bayker, and you shall get up in the morning. V'alachta elech, and you shall go in the morning. You'll turn back and you'll go to your tents. That means that you have to stay overnight for Pesach. After you eat the carbon Pesach, I don't want you running home. Stay overnight in Jerusalem until the next day. So too on Sukkot, you got to stay overnight. It's not enough to simply show up, right? You know, they say half the game is just showing up. From this Gemara, you see something else. Half the game is not just showing up. You got to be in the game as well. The Gemara says you got to stay overnight. The Hasam, you know, and how do I know in Pesach that you have to stay overnight? Except in the morning, after having eaten the carbon Pesach, in the morning you'll turn back and go to your tents. Now, Rameh and Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov explained that Shavuos has a compensate that the pasuk, the Chag HaMatzos, the Chag HaShavuos, the Chag HaSukkos, the festival of Pesach, the festival of Shavuos, the festival of Sukkot, has a compensation period for the Shalmei Chagiga, for your Chagiga Shalom, and to have meat on your table, a compensation for 7 days, right? But the Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon interpreted the pasuk differently. They needed that pasuk to teach me 3 Yom Tovim. The Tanakama said any 3 Yom Tovim passage in your Oivon, do not delay about Takal Shali. And Rabbi Shimon said, I need exactly that order. Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, in order to be able to do not delay. So therefore, the Tanakama B'Rab Shimon Tashlumin La'atzeres Minanu. How do they know that even on Shavuos, which is only a 1-day holiday, that I actually have 7 days? I have 7 days to compensate if I don't bring the Shalmei Chagiga. Nafkalu Miditani Rabba Bar Shmuel. They derive it from the way the Baraisa, which was taught by Rabba Bar Shmuel. The Tanya Rabba Bar Shmuel, Amra Torah. The Torah says 2 things. Minei Yomim v'Kadish Chodesh. Count the days and sanctify the beginning of the month. A Jewish month, and this is important because this we're going to need to know this for later Gemaras. We count the month using the lunar calendar. The lunar calendar, meaning when the waning of the moon until it disappears and then starts to reappear, is actually 29 and a half days, approximately. 29 and a half days. So actually, the real Chodesh, the real month, the new month, is in the middle of the day or the middle of the night, because it's a half a day, 29 and a half days. Nonetheless, the Gemara is saying we don't count half days. We go full, either a full 29 days or a full 30 days. But that's the way it is. We don't count hours, we count days. Mana yomim, days, and then you sanctify the month. Mina yomim v'kadish atzeres. Count days, i.e., the Omer, the 50 days of the Omer that we count between Pesach and Shavuos. If everybody remembers, we count the Omer. Ma chodesh l'manunim. Just like the beginning of the month is sanctified for a period equal to the units of that counted by a day, so too it's counted by a day. So we see from here that the period of sanctifying the Shavuos, it lasts a week. Because how do we count, everybody, the Omer? We count it Hayom, Yom Rishon, Hayom, what do you call it? Hayom, let's say, Yom Achad Asa Yom. Today is the 11th day. Shehem Shavua Echad Varba Yomim Loima, because that is 1 week and 4 days into the Omer. Okay? Now, having said it, so that means that the Omer, the counting Omer, has two components. The day itself, this is the 11th day of the count of 50, which happens to be the week and day, how many weeks and days into the Omer. That means we have to count both the days and the weeks. So number one, with regard to Shavuos, there's a count of weeks. So since there's a count of weeks to get to Shavuos, we say the compensation for Shavuos is also a week. You also see from here that you have to count both when you're doing the Omer, both the days and the weeks. The question then comes up, what happens if a person forgot to count? We know if you forget to count the Omer for 24 hours, you don't say the rest of it with a bracha, right? You say it without a bracha. Forget. What happens if you forgot the days, but you mentioned the weeks? You didn't say Hayom Yom Achad Asa Yom. Today is the 11th day, but you do say Hayom Shvua Echad. Today is 1 week. Barbo Yomim Loima. 1 week and 4 days into the Omer. Did you accomplish? You accomplished one part of the Omer, the week part. Or if you said today is the 11th day of the Omer, and you didn't say the week and the how many weeks it's into it, you also kept the Omer. The question is, do you continue to say with a bracha or not? The other question is, if it's two separate mitzvahs, counting the number of days, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 50, and counting the actual weeks to go, then why are we making only one bracha? We should make two brachas, just like we do on tefillin. Lo niach tefillin and al mitzvahs tefillin. So all of those kashas are all wrapped in here. We're not going into it because we could get stuck here for a month. But all the Rishonim, the Achrayim, everybody is busy in this and trying to truly understand what exactly is the Omer. Okay? It's the count of the Omer. But anyways, so says the Gemara, you're right. There is a count of weeks between Pesach and Shavuos. We count the weeks, but we also count the days. Emat Seretz Chad Yoima. Shavuos will be sanctified for 1 day, because the day is also a unit of counting between Pesach and Shavuos. Amarava says no. Now regarding Shavuos, do we count only the days and not the weeks? Amar said, the master, and some say this is Abaya, that goes mitzvah liyamone yemei u mitzvah liyamone shavuot. This is what I just said. There's a commandment to count days, and there's also a commandment to count weeks. And therefore comes all the questions that I just asked you. Is it one mitzvah or it's two mitzvahs? If it's two mitzvahs, let's make two separate brachas. What happens if I didn't count the days, but I counted the weeks, or I counted the weeks and I didn't count the days? Do I continue to make a bracha? Right? All of this is in there. Anyways, Va'oi Chag Shavuos Ktiv. It's also written the festival of Shavuos, which means, what does Shavuos mean? The festival of weeks. A week in Hebrew is a Shavuah, a 1 week. The festival of weeks. It's called weeks, so therefore it's called the weeks. 5A2. So now, we said before, we listed a whole bunch of things that are obligations or donative stuff that needed to be brought in time. Otherwise, you'd be over on do not delay. And we threw in the Pesach, right? The carbon Pesach. And the question was, wait a minute. The carbon Pesach doesn't need, you're not over on do not delay in the carbon Pesach if you pass 3 Yom Tovim. You're over on it if you don't bring it on the 14th day of Nisan. That's its day. In fact, if you don't bring it on the thing, you're chayav kares. You're chayav being cut off. It's one of the 2 positive commandments, it and circumcision, that gets you cut off if you don't do it. So Pesach, Bar Mikri, B'Kolamu. The Passover is can be brought on any of the other holidays. Pasach Zimnan Kavila. The Pesach is fixed the afternoon of the 14th of Nisan. Akrivi. If you bring it, great. Imloy akrivi, itchale. If you don't bring it, you blew it. And in fact, you know what happens to the carbon that's left over? It becomes a shalomim. It becomes an automatic shalomim. So what's going over here?
What about Teshuvah?
No, that's a Pesach Sheni. That's only if you were too far away,
right? Correct.
Or you were tummy. But what happens if you weren't? You had the animal. Now you didn't bring it. The animal itself becomes a shlomim. And you fafuch, so you don't get 7 days to be mashlam. So and you don't get 3 regolim, 3 holidays to pay back the Pesach. That doesn't work. In fact, you don't even bring the Pesach Sheni because you blew it. It's only if you were on the road, if you got stuck in the airport and the Southwest canceled another flight, and boom, right? That's one thing. But if you're there and you didn't do it, what's going on? So it says the Gemara. Listen to Amar Rav Chisda. It's unbelievable. Pesach Kedei Nasva. You're right. Pesach was brought in for no legal purpose. It happens to be that in the language of the Baraisis and the Mishnah, they always stick Meiser and Pesach together. When it's talking about Meiser Behema and Pesach, they just say to bring it, since Meiser Behema is a Kachim Kalim and Pesach is a Kachim Kalim, they're both similar to Shlomims, so they're brought together, but really no legal purpose. Rav Sheshes Sama, my Pesach, Shalmei Pesach. It means the Shalmei Pesach. Now, what's the Shalmei Pesach? That's the extra you brought to make sure that you had extra meat at your Seder. Essentially, it's the Chagi. It's a double Chagigo. There's a Shalmei Chagigo you got to bring because you came up to the regal. And on Pesach, there's something called the Shalmei Pesach, meaning that you bring an extra Pesach to make sure there's enough, there's enough meat on the table. That's already Shlomim, that's already mentioned in the Brisa. So says the Gemara, Tana Shlomim Aboyim Machmas Pesach. The Shlomim is being, the Brisa mentions the Shlomim that's being brought on account of a Pesach. Tana Shlomim Aboyim Machmas Atzman. And the Shlomim that are brought in their own rights. Why? The Salkadat the Chaminam, I might have brought, oh, you Machmas Pesach Kosi, since you're bringing in an account of the Pesach, because you want to make sure that there's enough meat for everybody, so you're bringing it because of the Pesach. We're now on Amid Beis 5B1. Pesach Domu, it's treated like Pesach. Kamash Malon, that no, it's not treated like the Pesach at all, and you get to compensate. All right, we're going to stop here because it's already 9:15. Okay, so at least we got up to Amid Beis. So